This week, Pope Francis names 19 new cardinals. The world turns its attention to Syria, and Catholic-Jewish relations celebrate an important anniversary. All this and more coming up next. Hello and welcome to this Red Hat edition of Vatican Connections. Pope Francis revealed the names of 19 prelates he is making cardinals. In an unusual move, back in October, the Vatican told us a consistory for new cardinals would be held in February, and that Pope Francis would give us the names of the new cardinals as soon as he finalized the list. Last Sunday, after leading the Angelus, Pope Francis said, "As you know, I'm holding a consistory in February. I will be creating 16 new cardinals." He then proceeded to list those names, plus the names of 3 cardinals over the age of 80 whom he is making cardinals because of their distinguished service to the Church.
Ecco I nomi dei nuovi cardinali. Monsignor Pietro Parolin, Arcivescovo titolare di Acquapendente, Segretario di Stato. Monsignor Lorenzo Baldisseri, Arcivescovo titolare di Diocleziana, Segretario Generale del Sinodo dei Vescovi. Monsignore Gerard Ludwig Müller, Arcivescovo Vescovo Emerito di Regensburg, Prefetto della Congregazione per la Dottrina della Fede. Monsignor Beniamino Stella, Arcivescovo titolare di Midilla, Prefetto della Congregazione per il Clero. Monsignore Vincent Gerard Nichols, Arcivescovo di Westminster, Gran Bretagna. Monsignore Leopoldo José Brenes Solórzano, Arcivescovo di Managua, Nicaragua. Monsignore Gérard Cyprien Lacroix, Arcivescovo di Quebec, Canada. Monsignore Jean-Pierre Couttois, Arcivescovo di Abidjan, Costa d'Avorio. Monsignore Orani Jean Tempesta, Arcivescovo di Rio de Janeiro, Brasile. Si vede che ci sono tanti brasiliani, eh? Monsignore Gualterio Bassetti, Arcivescovo di Perugia, Città delle Pieve, Italia. Monsignore Mario Aurelio Poli, Arcivescovo di Buenos Aires, Argentina. Monsignore Andrew Jeom So Jung, Arcivescovo di Seul, Corea. Monsignore Riccardo Ezzatti Andrello, Arcivescovo di Santiago del Cile, Cile. Monsignore Philippe Nakelentuba Ouedraogo, Arcivescovo di Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Monsignore Orlando Quevedo, Arcivescovo di Cotabato, Filippine. Monsignor Chibli Langlois, Vescovo di Le Cayenne, Haiti. Insieme ad essi unirò ai membri del Collegio Cardinalizio 3 arcivescovi emeriti che si sono distinti per il loro servizio alla Santa Sede e alla Chiesa. Monsignore Loris Francesco Capovilla, Arcivescovo titolare di Mesembria. Monsignore Fernando Sebastián Aguilar, Arcivescovo emerito di Pamplona. Monsignor Kelvin Edward Felix, Arcivescovo emerito di Castries, nelle Antille.
Yes, one of the 16 cardinals under the age of 80 is Archbishop Gerald Lacroix of Quebec City. He is the only North American and the only Archbishop of a primatial see in this group. This was his reaction to the news.
Hello.
Hello, Monseigneur Lacroix. When you first heard the news of your appointment, what was your reaction?
My reaction was, I was very surprised. You know, the Pope this time decided not to advise the future cardinals 1, 2, or 3 days ahead of time, which was the way they did things in the past. When we're appointed bishop, we're asked, and then they tell us such and such a date, it will be announced. In our case, none of us, except for just a few, maybe older ones in Rome, none of us were advised. So we all learned it at the same time you did when we listened to his Angelus from Rome. So it was a very big surprise. I was not expecting that at all. I mean, I knew it could happen someday. When you're Archbishop of Quebec, the primatial see, you know that it could happen. But I didn't think it would be yesterday. It was a complete shock, to tell you the truth.
Some other prelates also shared their reactions. Through the Archdiocesan Twitter feed, Cardinal designate Vincent Nichols of Westminster said, "Personally, this is a humbling moment when I'm asked to take a place in the service of the Holy See." Now, one of the non-voting cardinals, Loris Capovilla, said he found out about his appointment because he watches the Angelus on Sundays. He told an Italian newspaper that friends had told him he could become a cardinal, but he didn't take them seriously. He said, "This appointment is, quote, a ray of light on the twilight of my life." While Pope Francis didn't advise the prelates beforehand that he would be making them cardinals, he did write a letter right after he made the announcement telling the cardinals to be how he views their role. He said, "The cardinalate does not signify a promotion, nor an honor or a decoration. It is simply a service that requires one to widen one's view and open one's heart." He also said, "I ask you, please receive this designation with a simple and humble heart, and while you must do so with pleasure and joy, ensure that this sentiment is far from any expression of worldliness or from any form of celebration contrary to the evangelical spirit of austerity, sobriety, and poverty." So now, what exactly is the role of a cardinal? Well, CNS asked that very question to Cardinal Thomas Collins of Toronto when he was made cardinal, and this is what he had to say.
The red robes, those spectacular scarlet robes of the cardinals, the reason for that is the shedding of blood. And I'm just reading now a biography of St. John Fisher by E.E. Reynolds, and thinking of there is the model for someone who gives the reason for the liturgical beauty and all of that, and the glory that it comes from. A person whose fidelity in the midst of a society which was turning away from that vision of God's plan, he was faithful. And I think he can be therefore a model for, I would think, for every bishop. But he's a model. John Fisher is the model for bishops, and he's a model for cardinals, as is St. Charles Borromeo. Charles Borromeo is just a person of just absolute fixity of purpose, like just absolutely focused on just serving our Lord faithfully and trying to be just transparent to the grace of God. But he himself gave a martyrdom in this. He experienced that in a sense, not of physical thing, but he was with his people, even in the midst of plague and things like that. And he was also very firm in terms of the civil power. The questions we face of a weakening of faith and people drifting away, becoming confused, becoming all that. This is not the issues faced by many of our brothers and sisters in Christ. They're facing the prospect of being killed, of shedding their blood for Christ. This is not a it's not a historic thing of the past. And so many people in the church face that, and others face the less obvious challenge of being faithful in the midst of a society that has often lost its way. It needs to see the provident hand of God to lead it home.
Changing track a little bit, we have learned this week that Polish Archbishop Joseph Wesolowski is being investigated by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and Vatican City-States legal authorities for alleged abuse against minors while he was nuncio to the Dominican Republic. We learned this week when the Vatican's representative to the United Nations, Archbishop Silvano Tomasi, addressed the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. He outlined the steps the Holy See is taking to help wipe out any abuse of children. He said, since the Holy See submitted their last report to the committee, not only has Pope Francis approved the creation of an international committee to prevent child abuse, but a citizen of Vatican City has been placed under investigation for alleged crimes against children that took place outside Vatican City. The Vatican spokesperson, Father Federico Lombardi, confirmed the Vatican citizen is Archbishop Wesolowski, and he is being investigated by the Vatican's legal authorities, not just the CDF. Archbishop Wesolowski was removed as nuncio to the Dominican Republic after he was accused of paying for sex with boys. On a lighter note, the elevation of Pope John XXIII's secretary to the cardinalate puts the Second Vatican Council in the spotlight once again, and just in time, the Cardinal Bea Center for Judaic Studies at the Gregorian University is marking the 50th anniversary of Nostra Aetate with a special lecture given by none other than the Pope's personal friend, Rabbi Abraham Skorca of Buenos Aires. He offers a look at Catholic-Jewish dialogue in Latin America 50 years after the declaration of Nostra Aetate. He also helped launch a book about his friend, the Pope, and he spoke with L'Osservatore Romano about his long-standing friendship with Jorge Bergoglio. Rabbi Skorca said he attended a Te Deum service at the Cathedral of Buenos Aires on May 25th of some year, he doesn't remember. May 25th is Argentina's national feast day. Now, after the service, he went up to then Archbishop Bergoglio to thank him for his homily. Skorca said it was supposed to be a quick greeting, but then he looked me in the eyes and we started talking about soccer. The conversation went on for some time and the two leaders started getting together on a regular basis just to talk, and so a friendship was born. Rabbi Skorca also pointed out that in Argentina there is a long history of Catholic-Jewish cooperation, and other bishops and rabbis have written books together in the past. This week, the Vatican was definitely focused on Syria. Various Vatican offices were looking at the situation in the Middle East and how to bring peace to the region. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with Archbishop Pietro Parolin, the Secretary of State, to discuss Syria, to discuss the Palestine-Israel peace talks, and other issues as well. The Pontifical Council for the Eastern Churches held their annual meeting looking at the plight of Christians in the East and how to support them. The Pontifical Academy for Science held what is being called a brainstorming session about the situation in Syria in order to present Pope Francis with recommendations that he can take to the upcoming Geneva II Peace Conference scheduled for January 22nd. Now, the Pope himself won't attend, but the Vatican's nuncio to the UN, Archbishop Silvano Tomasi, will be there and will present the Vatican's recommendation. Now, coming up next, we'll talk with Karl Haytu of the Catholic Near East Welfare Association about Syria and this week's meetings. When the Arab Spring first happened, it looked like it was going to be a lightning uprising that would bring great change to the whole region. Instead, we are currently into the 4th year of armed conflict. As a result, Syrians are living in a perpetual war zone. Karl Haytu is the director of the Canadian branch of the Catholic Near East Welfare Association. He's in Rome this week, taking part in various meetings focused on the Middle East. Karl, thank you for joining us. Now, we hear regularly about Syria in the news, and as a result, there's been a bit of information overload and desensitization. So first off, refresh our memories. What is the current situation in Syria?
We spent 3 years now of fighting following the Arab Spring of 2011. And what started as a peaceful demonstration turned out to be an ugly war, and it fell into an ugly war very rapidly. And so right now where we're at is that what we call the Syria civil war has become a very complex international issue, a complex regional in the Middle East issue, and also a complex internal issue. So what we see happening is many observers will call it now the modern 21st century new type of conflict, where the international community has not responded properly, where the regional communities have not responded properly, and certainly not at the national level, which means that this conflict that should have been resolved through diplomatic fashion many months ago is still now at its worst moment.
So you had a chance to take part in the brainstorming session at the Pontifical Academy for Sciences, and the recommendations from that session will most likely be presented at the Geneva II Convention this month. Can you tell us what came out of that brainstorming? I know you can't give us specifics, but what are the challenges, and are there areas that people agreed could be an open door to peace?
What everybody agreed, there needs to be a ceasefire immediately. It has to be, don't wait for the perfect kind of diplomatic solution. Everybody should agree now that the suffering needs to stop, and that to allow humanitarian convoy and humanitarian distribution to happen now to the suffering people, because now there's many sections of Syria where people are in a state of famine. Also, that the negotiation at Geneva, many nations are calling for the removal of Assad. What came very strong is that should not be a condition. Assad is not the key here.
Right.
To be removed, because if we remove and call for the removal of Assad, it can only be done through more violence. There should not be any precondition for negotiation, a peace treaty, a ceasefire.
Wow.
Then you have to involve Iran and Saudi Arabia. There are also many, many, many groups, rebel groups, fighters, jihadists, that are being financed by private foundations. Not even countries, private foundations, and bringing weapons of killing, destruction in Syria. And the rebels are fighting between one another, which creates more innocent people to die. So a ceasefire, humanitarian convoy, and stopping the influx of weapons in Syria.
Now, you also took part in a meeting with the Congregation for Eastern Churches, and the focus there was Christians in Syria. Tell us more about that.
2 million Christians live in Syria. And so we discussed this week into a workshop about the aid and the support to those 2 million Christians in Syria that are also refugees, that are also displaced. And because they're a minority, in the last 6 months in particular, have been targeted by those rebels that have been coming, those jihadists that are from outside Syria, coming in Syria, focusing and attacking the Christian communities. And this is really worrisome for us. And, of course, aiding the Christians without, of course, never refusing aid to Muslims is of great importance. So during this meeting this week, we discussed what each of the organization is doing over there. Just to give you an indicator, Catholic organization, only Catholic organizations worldwide have given through Caritas, Kenewa, the local churches and religious communities, $80 million of aid since 2012. 80 million. And 38 million went right into Syria. And the rest went in Jordan, it went into Lebanon, Turkey, Iraq, to help all refugees. We were told by Bishop Odo, who's the Chaldean bishop of Syria, he was telling us that if this conflict lasts longer, another year, Christians are going to flee for good and they will never come back. And this would be a major tragedy for Syria and the future of the Christians in the Middle East.
So my last question for you, can you tell us quickly, what is Kenewa doing on the ground in Syria? And I understand you're also in the wider region.
But in the last 2 years, Kenewa has provided over $1 million in aid in Jordan, in Lebanon, and in Syria, but mostly in Syria. And that aid, of course, is I would say about 50% is in food. So we're working with religious communities, with dioceses, with priests, bishops that have well-organized committees that are locating and finding the refugees and the displaced. The other big component we're doing is to provide school. As you know, many schools have been destroyed or people have been moved to other cities. So a school that usually would have 200 or 300 students are now have 1,000 students, and they're not equipped to receive those new Syrian students or children. Also, housing is important. The cost of housing has exploded. It's unachievable. People live in tents, or they live in halls, or they live in parish halls and things like that. So we need a lot of equipment to accommodate those people. And then there's, of course, healthcare. And something that people might not think in those times of difficulty, Kenewa provides also pastoral care. People need to know that there's still the hope. They need to have put their faith into Jesus, into the people, into their church. And so we also provide for people the sacraments. So this is what Kenewa is doing in particular. And people, of course, are welcome to go on our webpage to donate directly to us, and that those funds goes directly to Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria.
And that was Carl Heitu, the director of Kenewa Canada. Now, for more information about Kenewa, you can visit their website, cnewa.ca or cnewa.org. Now, there are other organizations helping Syrians as well. Canada's Development and Peace, and Jesuit Refugee Services through Canadian Jesuits International. You can find links to those websites on our website, saltandlighttv.org/Vatican Connections. Now let's take a look at the nominations and resignations that happened around the world this week. Pueblo, Colorado has a new bishop, Monsignor Stephen Berg of Fort Worth, Texas. Now, he's currently serving as administrator of Fort Worth, and he will remain there until the new bishop for that diocese is ordained and installed at the end of the month. Monsignor Berg himself will be ordained and installed in his new diocese February 27th. Pope Francis created a new Maronite diocese for West and Central Africa. He has appointed Father Simon Fadul as the first bishop or exarch of the diocese. Meanwhile, inside the Vatican walls, Pope Francis renewed the mandate of the Commission of Cardinals overseeing the Vatican Bank. But he appointed almost all new members to the commission. The only cardinal who stays on is Cardinal Jean-Louis Tauran. The new members are Cardinal Christoph Schönborn of Vienna, Cardinal Santos Aureli Castello, Archbishop Pietro Parolin, the Secretary of State, and Cardinal Thomas Collins of Toronto. Time to flip through the papal daytimer and see what Pope Francis has been up to this week. Last Sunday, Pope Francis baptized 32 babies in the Sistine Chapel. This baptism mass is a tradition. It happens every year on the Feast of the Baptism of the Lord and signals the end of the Christmas season. Usually the babies are children of Vatican City employees, but this year the Pope also baptized the baby of a couple who both work for the Italian military police in Grosseto. Their story got attention not only because they are not Vatican employees, but also because they have not yet been married in the church. They were married in a civil ceremony. Pope Francis gave a 4-minute homily without a prepared text. He told the parents and godparents the faith is the most beautiful inheritance they will leave their children, and they have a duty to hand down the faith. He also said that those 32 babies were the most important people in the chapel, and he told mothers if they cry because they're hungry, go ahead and let them eat because they are the main focus today. On Monday, Pope Francis met with ambassadors accredited to the Holy See. CNS has more on what he told the diplomats.
La pace è inoltre ferita da qualunque negazione della dignità umana, prima fra tutte dalla impossibilità di nutrirsi in modo sufficiente. Non possono lasciarci indifferenti i volti di quanto soffrono la fame, soprattutto dei bambini, se pensiamo a quanto cibo viene sprecato ogni giorno in molte parti del mondo, immerse in quella che ho più volte definito la cultura dello scarto. Purtroppo, oggetto di scarto non sono solo il cibo o i beni superflui, ma spesso gli stessi esseri umani che vengono scartati come fossero cose non necessarie. Ad esempio, desta orrore il solo pensiero che vi siano bambini che non potranno mai vedere la luce vittime dell'aborto, o quelli che vengono utilizzati come soldati, violentati o uccisi nei conflitti armati o fatti oggetti di mercato in quella tremenda forma di schiavitù moderna che è la tratta degli esseri umani, la quale è un delitto contro l'umanità.
Of course, Wednesday was the general audience, and no, he did not give anyone a ride in the Pope-mobile this time. Pope Francis continued his catechesis on baptism and the sacraments. CNS has more.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. Jesus said to the 11 disciples, "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And know that I am with you always, yes, to the end of time."
Dal momento che Gesù disse questo che abbiamo sentito del Vangelo, i discepoli sono andati a battezzare. E da quel tempo a oggi c'è una catena nella trasmissione della fede per il battesimo. E ognuno di noi siamo l'anello di quella catena. Un passo avanti sempre, come un fiume che irriga. E così è la grazia di Dio, e così è la nostra fede, che dobbiamo trasmetterla ai nostri figli, trasmetterla ai bambini, perché loro, quando siano adulti, possono trasmetterla ai suoi figli. Così è il battesimo. Perché? Perché il battesimo ci fa entrare in questo popolo di Dio che trasmette la fede. Questo è molto importante, un popolo di Dio che cammina e trasmette la fede.
Vatican Connections is interactive. Send us your questions or comments by Facebook, Twitter, email, or post. Via email, send comments to info@saltandlighttv.org. And by post, send letters to 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1, Canada. Well, that's it for this edition of Vatican Connections. Join us next time as we look at the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity. From everyone here, thanks for watching.